and his wife had left him because she had had an affair. You know, they had been married for a number of years. Their kids had grown up. They had one last child. They had 3 kids, and their last child was like a junior or senior in high school. And so they were kind of, doing their own thing, and the kids were doing their own thing. The older 2 were out of the house, and his wife had an affair, and so she left him. And he said, you know what the interesting part about this whole thing was? He said, is giving up all the married couple friends that we had. Welcome to the Salty Pastor Podcast. Today, friends. Why are friends important? Do you actually need friends? How do you find them? And how do you hang on to them? Welcome to the Salty Pastor Podcast. I am the Salty Pastor. I was a pastor for 39 years full-time. I am now retired, and I spend my time helping coach people up in their faith. If you're a person that has been attending a church, you're part of a church, and you want more to help your own growth, then the Salty Pastor is for you. If you're a person who's in between churches, you haven't found a local community in which to really connect, the Salty Pastor is for you. If you're a person that maybe had a bad church experience and you want to continue to grow in your faith, or maybe you're a person who travels and you can't get involved in a local congregation, then the Salty Pastor is for you. Our goal is simple: coach you in your faith. Not here to tell you what to think, what to believe, but to give you the unvarnished clarity of what the New Testament teaches so that you can determine for yourself your relationship with Jesus Christ. And when you know what you believe and why you believe it, that's when you really start to think for yourself and your faith takes off. So today, we're going to kind of expand on Tuesday's podcast where we studied Galatians chapter 6, the 7th rule for life, and it's all about friends and friendship. Now, in the movie It's a Wonderful Life, Jimmy Stewart plays the character of George Bailey. He's a married man, he has a number of kids, and he runs a small town savings and loan. And when his crazy uncle loses a payment to the big bank, he is in danger of losing everything. He is so despondent, he wishes he had never lived. Well, the whole movie is about what would have happened if he had never lived. And at the end, of course, the day is saved. Now, how is the day saved? Well, all of his friends, they rally around and they pull his basic fat out of the fire. Well, all of the lives he touched came out and helped. And at the end of the movie is a message from the angel that helped him that simply says that a man who has friends is wealthy. So it's obviously a movie about friendship and how friends impact our lives. It's a classic feel-good movie because it appeals to the part of every human heart that wants to believe that their life matters. And most importantly, their life matters to other people, that they had a good impact and that they have friends. Well, my question today is, where in the world does this desire come from? The idea that we as human beings are wired to have friends or want friends. What is it about us? Well, secular humanists, scientific materialists, atheists, they all say, well, it's just an evolutionary reflex that developed, and that is there's safety in numbers. But for thousands of years, human beings have been able to find safety without being in numbers. And so why has this desire and this need remained so prevalent within the human heart? Well, I think that is a very important question because spiritually speaking, and that is if you believe you have a soul, if there's a spiritual component to you, then that question cuts to the heart of your soul. So let's go back into Galatians chapter 6 and remember the basic principles about friendship that we drew, okay, that Paul talks about. Number one, God designed friendships, and friendships are designed to help you through life. He says in verse 2, bear one another's burdens and thus fulfill the law of Christ. So he talks about how we're to support and encourage one another through life. Number 2, authentic friends are important to your health overall, mental, emotional, spiritual, and it's what brings meaning and purpose to life. He says those who are spiritual should help restore those who've been snagged by life. So I think that's an important principle. Number 3, the best kind of friends are spiritually more mature than you are because they understand how life goes and what to do for you when you're struggling or you have a speed bump of life or maybe some tragic thing happens in your life. They understand because maybe they've gone through it and they've learned spiritual things about the whole struggle of life. Finally, I think it's important to note, because he talks about this later, is that poor friends try and use you for their own purposes. He says there, he goes, look, these people of the circumcision are trying to compel you because they may not want to be persecuted for the sake of Christ. In other words, they're basically doing what they're doing for their own selfish motives. And that's what poor friends do, is they use you to meet their own selfish needs in their life. So I'd like to point out some interesting phenomena about life, okay? Or excuse me, about friends, not life. All right. Number 1 is when you're young, it's really easy to start friendships and gather friends around you, primarily because you're in proximity to people your own age and people that have things in common with you due to school, due to sports, maybe something type of communal activity. Number 2 is because friendships are not deep when you're really, really young, because there's so few experiences in life that have actually been shared. They primarily revolve around shared interests. You might have football buddies or ultimate frisbee buddies or skiing buddies, or you might have your volleyball girlfriends or your one of your club activities with your girlfriends. You might be in a girls group. It doesn't matter. It's primarily our proximity and our commonality that allows us to build friendships easier when we're younger. But in middle school and high school, it starts to get more difficult, and then it never gets any easier after that. I think another reason, though, why it's easy to develop friendships when we're young is because when you're young, you've experienced almost no betrayal, disappointment, or rejection from people who you thought were your friends. So you have zero trust issues when you're young. Isn't that interesting? But as you get older, and I want to kind of point this out for your consideration, is that the more life changes you make, in other words, the more stages in life that you progress through, the more difficult it is to find and develop really good friends. My biggest example for this is when you get married. When you're single and dating, when you're single and you're even engaged to somebody, it's easy for all your single friends and you and your girlfriend or you and your boyfriend to all get together and hang out and do stuff together, right? It's easily mixed. But once you get married, it changes dramatically. Now you have to find friends where the wives and the husbands all enjoy one another. And that is really difficult to do, right? It's even tougher when kids enter into the mix because that is a whole new ball game. Finally, as you get older, this is another phenomena about friendship. The natural tendency is to have fewer and fewer friends. This is just the natural trajectory of life. You may have lots of acquaintances, but you're never going to have more and more deeper and authentic friends just by life naturally progressing along. If you want deeper and authentic friends as you get older, you have to be extremely intentional about it. You got to make it a priority in your life. So now that we have, some really good questions about how friendships work throughout life and some perspective, let's get down to what I call the nitty-gritty. And let's get really specific, okay? Number 1. When you're younger, look beyond proximity when it comes to developing your friendships. So this I would call perspective number 1. That is, as you get older, when you're in high school, when you're in college, and then you're just out of college, look beyond proximity when it comes to developing friendships. Don't just rely, well, these are the guys I play with football with in high school. Okay, maybe they're great friends and you feel like they're the best friends you'll ever have. But I guarantee you, very few people maintain their high school friendships throughout life. It's just extremely rare to do that, particularly if you went to a school of more than 1,000 students. So when you're younger, what you want to do is, instead of mourning an inability to find friends that you felt so close to in high school, realize I need to look beyond proximity if I want to develop new friendships. Now, what does that mean? Well, so often people use proximity, like where they work, where they live, their neighbors, or, the softball recreation league, to find their friend group. I'm challenging you to look beyond initial proximity. Set friend goals and then ask yourself, where am I going to go to meet friends that are better for me, that are good for me? Or if I lack friends, where should I go? This is a perfect opportunity to practice principle when you move to a new town or a new state because of a job change or because you go to university or graduate. So you move to a new town. Well, initially, it's going to be really difficult to develop good friends. And a lot of times people move, they get homesick, they feel lonely when they go off to college. But if you've been through it a couple of times, you realize that there's a recurring pattern. And that is, initially, you get to know the people that you work with and the people that live in the same apartment building or complex that you do. And I'm telling you that that's not all bad. You can find good friends there. But if you really want to be intentional about it, you have to say, I want to be a part of friends that are going to be really good for me over the course of my life. So set some friend goals and then ask yourself a simple question. Where would I go to find and develop these types of friends? I knew a guy, and he had friends that were just not good for him. They were holdovers from high school, and he went to the local community college and got a trade in welding. But he kind of maintained these friendships. And then if he ever wanted to go do something on the weekend, go out with his buddies or whatever, it was with these guys from high school who were going nowhere, had no desire to go anywhere, and all of them were developing addictive habits. And he thought, you know what? These friends are not good for me, and I'm not going anywhere. And at this time, welding was not much of a future, and he was having trouble getting work. And so it's not that way now, but this was about 20, 30 years ago. So he joined the fire department, and it changed his life when it came to good friendships. He was in a context where he could find friends that were men who were disciplined, they were motivated, they had a mission in life, they had a good job, and they wanted their lives to progress forward. That doesn't mean he was best friends with all the firemen, and even in his own firehouse, there were guys he liked and guys he didn't like. But what it did do is it gave him a context to find other like-minded men that were on the same trajectory. That's called setting a friend goal. Go where people are who are living on mission. They're not living aimless, or they are lost. If you're a young lady, go and find women who understand what it means to actually be a woman in today's world, a woman who wants to pursue the values that are going to bring the greatest fulfillment to her as a woman, not what the radical feminists are telling you. So find women who hold those values and try to become friends with them. So there's all different kinds of places that you could do that, all right? The other thing is, don't just rely on proximity, but also realize that men and women develop friendships differently. This is an important principle for young couples. Maybe you don't have kids yet, and you're trying to build a friend group of other young couples. You have to realize that men and women develop friendships differently. Women need to talk and relate. They build friendships through conversation. They build by relating to each other, right? Men need to work side by side. Guys aren't going to sit on a couch, drink coffee, and share their feelings and get closer. They're going to walk away and go, ooh, that felt kind of weird. What they do is they develop friendship with other men in masculine ways or masculine trajectories. And that appeals to the masculine heart of a man. And that tends to be side by side, shoulder to shoulder. So realize this if you're a young couple and you want to build a friendship with another couple, is that the guys have to build a friendship differently than the wives are going to build friendships. Just remember that, okay? So what is the best way for you if you want to build more friendships? You found a place where you want to go and be around men or women who are on mission and living a kind of life and shared values that you have. Well, first and foremost, here's some basic principles on how to build friendships. Number one, be friendly to all, but be good friends with very few. Be friendly to all, but only be good friends with a few. Why? Well, because to become a good friend, it takes time investment. If you only spend time with people 30 minutes a week in a public space where there's lots of people interacting, a social event, it's really difficult to become a good friend. If you are in a small group or a discipleship group, or you're serving alongside people for an extended period of time, an hour or two a week, then you're going to become good friends more quickly. If you're in a small group and you need to make a commitment to go to that group for a minimum of 12 weeks in a row, only then are you going to really start to feel like you're connected and a part of the group. And if you're a part of a group and you've gone for 12 weeks, towards the end, the 9th, 10th, 11th week, reach out to some of the other couples or individuals if you're single in the group and just say, hey, I'm going to go do such and such. Would you like to accompany? Hey, we're going to go play golf. Hey, we're going to go do this. We're going to go ride our bikes and stop and eat tacos for dinner at happy hour. Whatever it is, go and do it with them and see if you can build a friendship. And always be willing to keep trying. You want to be friendly. You want to be a friendly person. People who are friendly, people who communicate an air of openness when it comes to friendship, that you're approachable, tend to be able to build friendships. People who are closed tend not to be able to build friendships. That's an important principle. So let's spend the last half of our podcast and time together talking about how to lose friends and shrinking your good friends. Now, did I say that in a positive way or a negative way? Do I mean that's a good thing or a bad thing? Well, let's dig into it a little bit and find out. Number one, here's some basic principles that I want to share with you. Number one, unless you have no friends, throughout life, you should set the expectation that your authentic friends, your really, really good friend group is going to shrink. Unless you have no friends at all, you're a radical, off-the-charts introvert, and you don't know anybody, throughout your life, you're going to have a group of friends that shrinks. That is the natural trajectory of friendship. Now, there's a number of reasons for this. Reason number one is really great friends. Authentic friends are rare. Why? Because we're all broken people. We got idiosyncrasies, we got personality differences, we go through difficult times and we carry those scars with us. And that just makes it sometimes more difficult to find and maintain really authentic friends over time. We grow in certain directions. Sometimes it's a positive thing. It's not because of a past betrayal or a hard time in life. It's a good thing. We're growing, we're expanding. We become more on mission in life, and people that thought were good friends, they don't share the same mission or passion about life. And so you just grow apart. That's just the natural trajectory of friendship over the course of your life. So set that expectation. Why would you want to set that expectation? Because when it happens, you're not disappointed in yourself. You're not critical of yourself. You don't develop a negative attitude about who you are as an individual. And what you do is you realize, well, this is the natural trajectory, so I need to be intentional to counter this. It's just like your health. As you get older, guess what? Your health starts to wane. Now, you can just call yourself an old person and you can't do what you did and feel bad about it and regret it and say, boy, I wish I would have done that when I was 30. Or you can get out, you can get active, you can be intentional about countering the effects of age. What that does is that revitalizes you and gives you a whole new outlook on life. It's the same way with your friends. Set the right expectation of the natural trajectory of friendships in order that you can counter the natural trajectory of friendship, okay? Number 2. One of the reasons why the natural trajectory is towards fewer and fewer friends is because of difficult times. If you live for more than a few decades, you realize life is a lot harder than you ever imagined. You're going to go through difficult times. Every life has rain fall on it, and that causes you to lose friends. I was talking to a guy about, probably 5 or 6 years ago when I was still in the full-time ministry. And his wife had left him because she had had an affair. You know, they had been married for a number of years. Their kids had grown up. They had one last child. They had 3 kids, and their last child was like a junior, senior in high school. And so they were kind of, doing their own thing, and the kids were doing their own thing. The older 2 were out of the house. And his wife had an affair, and so she left him. And he said, you know what the interesting part about this whole thing was? He said, is giving up all the married couple friends that we had. He said, because once I was single, suddenly all of my married couple friends dried up. So sometimes you go through a really difficult time in life. Sometimes you learn things about life in a struggle. You learn things about yourself. And suddenly the shallow friendships that you thought were deep friendships are revealed to be shallow. And so they're insufficient for you. That is not a bad thing to recognize this, because what that does is that reveals things to yourself about where you're at in the friendship trajectory, but also it helps you understand what kind of new friends, maybe friendships you need to develop or pursue. Because sometimes what we do is the people who should really be our good friends, we relegate to our not good friend group, right? Just acquaintances. And then we keep people around us that aren't good for us. And a lot of times we should invert that, right? Sometimes the people we should have as really good friends are the people who are better for us as people. I would say, though, number 3, the biggest thing that causes the trajectory of people losing friends over time is spiritual awakenings and politics. That's right, spiritual awakenings and politics. When you have a spiritual awakening, what you do is you start changing your worldview, all right? And your worldview about reality changes. And so some things just aren't sufficient. I was reading about a group of people, a friend group down in Southern California, and they were middle class and maybe getting into upper middle class, and so they got into this thing where they would travel over to Lake Havasu, which is a big lake. It's in in Nevada, right on the border of Nevada and California, and so they would go over there and they'd be on this lake. And Lake Havasu is known as kind of a party place. It's like an adult spring break in perpetuity, right? And a lot of people go there because, number 1, it's a lot cheaper. And number 2 is because it just has this party atmosphere. And so this couple, and it was like 3 or 4 couples went over there. They bought a boat together, and they would go over there and spend a month in the summer. Or, they just tried to get away as much as possible. And then one of the couples in there, he was diagnosed with cancer. And then, of course, that was a wake-up call. And he and his wife had a spiritual awakening. And what happened, though, is then that friend group broke up, because they just didn't like the fact that he was pursuing other things. And he was also, and his wife were saddened by it, but going to Lake Havasu and partying every weekend was just not sufficient enough for them anymore. They wanted their life to mean something, not just pursue pleasure. And so this is why it fell apart. A lot of times when you have a spiritual awakening, a lot of your friends, they will reject you out of hand. And that's part of the cost of discipleship, the cost of following Jesus, and you lose that. Now, the one thing that transcends before you become a Christian, the difference between non-Christians, you have a spiritual awakening, and that might divide or lose friendships or cause you to lose friendships, is politics. Politics can cause you to lose friends that are non-Christian and Christian as well. Okay, it's really interesting. If I could tell a story about some people I know in the subdivision that I live in. I walk a lot, so I get to know people that are out. And there's these two guys. They're both single. They live next to each other. And one puts Trump signs out on his lawn, and on his truck, he has a Trump flag. And then the other one is Roman Catholic, very committed Roman Catholic, and he is about as far left as you can get, right? And so the guy who's a big Trump supporter considers himself a Christian. He actually worked for a church for a number of years in his past. And so anyway, so I've got both these guys. I know them both, and they know me as they knew me as a pastor, and they knew me as a retired pastor. And so we talk a lot. And it's just so funny how they talk about each other. And so it's interesting. Both of them consider themselves Christian, but they couldn't be further apart politically. So what do you do if politics gets in the way of a friendship, especially one that you have had for a long time? Okay. Now, I know a guy. I'd consider him a friend because we talk and do stuff outside of any organized events that would push us together or cause us to socialize. We'll get together and do stuff, work with each other. And I remember over 8 or 9 years ago, very early on, he got on what is known as the Trump train. And he said when he got on the Trump train, he had a number of people stop being his friends because they didn't like Trump. They couldn't stand Trump. And this was, of course, during the first term. And we were talking about it one day, and he said something that's kind of stuck out to me or stuck with me. He said, it's hard to be friends with someone who develops their worldview around what the media says. And that got me to thinking. I started analyzing that, and I came up with an interesting thought, something that I've witnessed over decades as a full-time pastor. And because what I tried to do is I tried to create an environment where people, regardless of their political persuasion, could all sit under the same roof and draw closer to Christ. That was our express goal as a church that was very committed to a conservative interpretation of the New Testament and following Jesus Christ. And what I found over time, now this is just my observance, feel free to criticize it, not accept it, but my observance, and I call this an educated observance, is that people who are conservative in their politics separate their political ideology from their friendships. People who are progressive or very liberal in their politics, they may be a cultural Marxist, they may be a democratic socialist, don't do that. To them, their political positions define their friendships. Now, there's a lot of research to support this. There was a study on dating that came out about 10 years ago. It's changed since then. I've seen some updated research, but it was really interesting is that conservative singles were more likely at a 2-to-1 margin to go on a date with someone of a differing political party. So conservatives were willing to date non-political people, liberals and progressives, right? Whereas liberal progressives put party affiliation at the top of their list of must-haves and who they were going to date. Now, because of that divide, I think in the last 10 years, the research has come out showing that it's getting pretty equal on both sides. People won't go out with someone who has who's far on the other side politically than them. Now, the reason why I think this phenomena exists is because conservatives in their ideology generally want to keep government and politics out of their everyday life, right? Progressives, secular humanists, materialists, scientific materialists, democratic socialists, communists, socialists, they want to keep government, right, and politics involved in every area of life. Therefore, politics can, and I emphasize the word can, become their religion. It's their world view. Now, I know these are generalizations, and this is just my observation. But if you can look at it more objectively, I think it helps you understand how to deal with friends who are politically very far apart from you. Consider the reasons why this is the case, and that helps you learn how to deal with it when it arises, okay? So let's get specific. What do you do if a friend says they no longer want to be friends because you voted for the wrong person? Well, if you're a mature Christian, you have to remember your core values. Remember your code of honor. And that is, your mission is to influence people towards Jesus. This is your purpose in life. Jesus said in Acts 1:8, you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, even to the remotest parts of the earth. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 28, it's called the Great Commission or the Great Mission for a reason. He says, go and make disciples. So a disciple is a person who follows Jesus. So everything you do, your career, your family, and all of your friendships should be viewed as an opportunity in a loving way to push people closer to Jesus. This context can give you clarity on how to handle someone who says, I don't want to be your friend anymore because you didn't vote for the person I thought you should have voted for. So if you have a friend who's upset with you because of your vote, then your goal, in my opinion, is not to defend your political position. There may come opportunity to articulate it, but the goal of the friendship is not to defend your position. The goal of your friendship should be to push them towards Jesus, closer to Jesus, whether they want to get closer to Jesus or not. And sometimes, here's a salty truth, it's a hot take, our politics stop us from maturing in faith to Jesus, right? Sometimes that happens. And so sometimes you have to challenge people politically and their political beliefs in order to get them to draw closer to Jesus. So how do you do that? Number one, be willing to have a crucial conversation with them. Joseph Grenny has done a lot of great work. He wrote a book called Crucial Conversations. It's excellent. You don't even have to read the book. Just go on YouTube and look up Joseph Grenny and Crucial Conversations, and you can watch in little 3-minute, 5-minute clips on how to have a great crucial conversation. And one of the things that I think is critical in having a conversation like this with your friend is to frame it properly, okay? And that is, you want to articulate the goal of the conversation up front and identify the problem. So you might start off by saying, you know what, you really seem upset or you're distant lately. Why is that? And they may say, let's just be over the top here, well, I can't believe you would vote for this person who is an existential threat to our democracy. Now, your response could be along the lines of, well, if you would like to hear my reasons for why I voted the way I did, I'd be glad to articulate them for you. But the real question for me is why this issue is more important to you than our friendship. Now, you see how that reframes the entire conversation, okay? Then it allows you to go to the next phase, and that is, ask your friend to have a conversation where your friendship is not put at risk when you talk about it. So it's a basic challenge to put faith over their fear or over their position. Agree to some guidelines or guardrails when you talk about it. Before you have the conversation says, well, how can we talk about this and maintain our friendship? Because I value our friendship. I care about you as a person. And, you know, some people use it as a game. I heard of these two guys that wanted to talk about their political positions and maintain their friendship because their wives were really, really good friends. And so what they did is they turned into a competition. And they said, you bring up your 5 top reasons why you voted the way you did. I'll bring up my 5, and then we'll debate them like adults, okay? And then in the end, we'll agree to disagree. And what happened is they did that, and they realized that on some things they saw more eye to eye than they thought, and on others, they didn't. But what was fascinating, they became better friends because they could honestly share how they felt about these issues in their life with the other guy, and the other guy wasn't there to attack them. the other guy was just to go, okay, I see that, but I disagree. And it's so interesting how guys, they get to be better friends when they share an opinion and the other guy goes, well, I totally disagree with that. And then they go, okay, let's go have a beer. For some odd reason, that strengthens their friendship. It doesn't weaken it. Number 3, remember that when a person puts an issue over your friendship, they're communicating something to you. So you should ask yourself, what are they telling me by taking this approach with me? Figure out what it is they are communicating and then chart a course to navigate it. If it's a fear of Trump, then put together a strategy that addresses how they, as followers of Jesus, should not be putting their fear over faith. That in the end, its faith is more important. You might even point out that, look, when they voted Biden in, that was really fearful for me, but I didn't let it affect our relationship or our friendship. I didn't blame you for what I believed was incredible damage to our country. Because the final point here is this is what authentic friends do, is they say the truth. And if you have a friend that never wants to hear the truth, then that's really difficult to have them be an authentic friend. You see, if you've been friends a long time, through thick and thin, up and down, good economies and bad economies, Democrats in charge, Republicans in charge, and it never seemed to make a difference before, you might say to them, look, when your party's in charge and I feel it's really damaging, I share my opinion, but I don't let it interfere with the higher calling that Jesus has for our friendship. And that is that we encourage one another to a deeper faith in him. I don't blame you for the people you voted for when they damaged the country. I don't understand why you can't have the same respect for me that I have for you. All right? And then this is the final thing I want to say. I know this is a long podcast, but it's about friends, and I want you to catch all this, and that is this. Be willing to live with the outcome. Being truthful and honest is always the best policy. And if a person isn't willing to be reasonable and value your friendship, that's okay. You need to let them go. Grieve your loss and move on. The most gracious, the kindest, and most merciful goal for your friend is respect the trajectory that they want to walk at that time. All right? If you allow them to go their own trajectory and you don't get upset and angry about it and say things you shouldn't say and burn bridges, guess what? It allows them to go on and then eventually come back if they mature or grow through it. The other thing it does this is that by allowing them to move on, you're actually giving a sacrificial gift to them. If your belief system causes stress and hurt in their life and they're so upset about it, then by saying, okay, well, I'll just let you have the space you need. We won't talk for a while. That's okay. What you're actually doing is you're saying, I don't want to be a source of stress in your life. I guarantee you I'm not going to change my opinions or positions. I can still separate that and care for you as a friend, but if it creates stress in your life, that's fine, right? I know a lot of Christians who do that with their non-Christian friends, and it's not a, hey, I'm abandoning you as a friend. It's just I realize my presence in this new journey causes a lot of stress, and it does. It causes a lot of conviction and guilt in non-Christians often. It says, I don't want to do that to you. If you're ever ready to talk, just give me a call, and we'll pick up where we left off, okay? Now, if you let them go properly, if you're willing to live with the outcome, guess what? The greatest possibility for them to come back goes up, not down. And in the end, what you will gain is respect because you were truthful, you were honest, and you were willing to let them do and go the path they wanted to walk on. Now, I know it's a little bit longer, but it's on friends. But I hope all of this insight and these principles help you in your friendships. Because in the end, you need friends and you need people who will be alongside you. Fight against, be intentional against the natural trajectory in life as you get older to have fewer and fewer and fewer friends. Maintain the ones you have, if at all possible, and always seek to try to add a new one every now and then. This is Salty Pastor signing off. And remember, what you believe is one of the most important things about you.